मोरी लागी लगन गुरी चरण की हरिओम
Hari Om sir.
हरिओम
Hari Om sir.
Hari Om sir.
Hari Om sir.
Hari Om sir. Hari Om.
That enlivens your eyes to see. Remember that. Realize that. To the staggering truth for is to cognize the splash of divinity manifested in every being, everywhere. To identify and merge with that omnipotent, omniscient,
हाँ 9 बजे सर दूसरा टिकट कराना
okay हरिओम
Hari Om sir.
Hari Om sir.
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. We'll start with questions. Are there any questions? Before we start, all good in Calcutta? How was the cyclone? Is okay? Not as bad as Amphan?
It's just raining.
Yeah, I was tracking it last night and saw it shifted a little bit.
Yeah, it always spares us mostly.
It was a little too close to home, but I mean, it did do a lot of damage somewhere else nearby. So, anyway, cool. Any questions? Okay. In a way, it's only apt there are no questions because the topic of bhakti yoga is meant to make you stand still rather than it's meant to make you internalize. So, assuming that we have internalized what we have been discussing, I'm glad. We'll continue from where we left off. So, we talked about what is bhakti. And this section, if you recall, he first started telling you what all bhakti is not. He first started telling you what are the misconceptions about bhakti. And thereafter, he gave a very simple idea of what is devotion. First of all, where does devotion arise from? What is the whole sense of devotion? Devotion is a feeling in you of wonderment. Devotion is a feeling of you of deep dedication. Devotion is a feeling of a sense of surrender. It's a very deep emotion. It's not a surface emotion. It's not easy to develop devotion. And when does it arise? It arises, as I've highlighted out here, it arises when the intellect fails to comprehend something that is unknown and the mind surrenders to that area of ignorance. The intellect fails to comprehend to an area that is unknown, something that is unknown, and the mind surrenders to that area of ignorance. Please memorize this definition. First thing I want to bring to your notice is the relationship between bhakti and jnanam. Next time anyone tells you, अरे भगवत गीता पढ़ रहे हो, अरे वेदांत पढ़, तुम तो ज्ञानी हो, मैं तो भक्त. Some people say that also. But look at the definition of bhakti. And look how it's related to jnanam. Bhakti arises where jnanam stops. Devotion arises when the intellect fails to comprehend an unknown area and the mind develops a spirit of surrender. So bhakti is that sense of surrender, and it arises when? When the intellect is perplexed. The intellect doesn't know. Suppose I came to you and gave you. Why always you? Suppose you came to me. I always tell you. Suppose you came to me and gave me some terrible news. What's up? You have a disease. One option I have is to go and try to study everything about the disease. By the time I do that, it'll be too late. I'm not a expert in that. What do I have to do? I have to look for someone who knows about the disease and can help me with it. I have to look for someone who has knowledge of this realm. I'm ignorant about this realm. My intellect is failing to comprehend the details and the subtleties of disease and medicine. So I go to a doctor. I develop surrender to a doctor. And the doctor tells me, don't worry, do ABC things, adjust these things in your lifestyle, make sure you take these medicines and come back to me after 10 days. Of course, don't go to any doctor. Go to someone who do have a sense of corroboration. Have a sense of corroboration. But once broadly satisfied with who you are going to, once you are convinced that this person has knowledge in the area where you have ignorance, what do you have to do if you want to get treated? You must develop a spirit of surrender. You surrender to the doctor. Nowadays, we tell the doctor what to do. I was taking my dog to the vet yesterday. He's a very funny guy. Got a great sense of humor. So just next to his table, he has this sort of frame put up. Something I forget the exact line, but something along the lines of why have you come here? Didn't Google tell you what to do? Not saying don't Google, don't utilize the sources of knowledge available to you. You ought to. First time anything happens, Google is your first point of reference, and it's good. It's giving you access to information, but please understand, information is different from wisdom. Information is different from wisdom, and the assumption is, of course, that someone who's gone into the depth of that information, spent years in practice, has some wisdom, more than what that 10 years of experience is more than your 10 minutes of Googling, right? So use whatever information you have as a reference point, perhaps, or a point of clarification. But you have to develop a spirit of surrender. You must learn to surrender in areas of your ignorance. Please, this is very important. You must learn to surrender in areas of your ignorance. So first and foremost, look at the relationship between devotion and knowledge. If you have to develop devotion, if you want to develop devotion, you must have the sense of, I don't know. You must have an acknowledgement of, I don't know everything. I don't have the answer to everything. If you're sitting on your high horse and you think, I know it all, I understand it all. If your shutters are blind, you can't develop devotion. Arrogance and devotion they are opposites. You can't have an arrogant devotee. Doesn't make sense. It's a one-to-one correlation. And devotion and knowledge are like two pedals to a wheel. Where knowledge reaches its limits, devotion starts. And that sense of devotion prompts you, it pushes you to gain more knowledge. You want to know. See, it's not that you don't know, you surrender and you're done. Thank you. Someone else will take care of it. No, it doesn't end there. That sense of surrender, see, there's a beautiful definition, I think, by, I forget who it's by. But Swamiji used to display it. He used to say, faith is a belief in something I do not know. Faith is a belief in something I do not know. You develop a belief after some corroboration, whatever. So you develop a belief, and that's faith. Faith is a belief in something I do not know until I come to know it. Until I come to know it. Devotion loses its depth if there is no attempt made to bridge the gap. The beauty is that the more you get to know, the more you realize you don't know. You realize the vastness of your ignorance. That's a separate thing. But you have to attempt to learn. You have to attempt to unfold the mystery. Otherwise, it doesn't sustain. You grow neutralized to the wonderment also. You grow neutralized to the wonderment. So, knowledge goes hand in hand with devotion. And devotion arises when the mind develops a spirit of surrender once the intellect fails to comprehend that realm. When the intellect fails to comprehend something unknown and the mind surrenders to that area of ignorance, that sense, that feeling of surrender is devotion. And what is the core of that feeling? Devotion is recognizing, acknowledging that splash of divinity manifest everywhere. That's the other line we've highlighted. So what are you surrendering to? What are you developing that surrender to? You're developing that surrender to that splash of divinity, that unknown hand, that unseen hand. O palan hare nirgun ho nyare, tumre bin hamara kaun ho nahi. Beautiful line. Do we truly believe it? तुम्हारे बिन हमरा कौनो नहीं. नहीं, मेरी वाइफ है, मेरे बच्चे हैं, मेरा परिवार है, मेरा घर है. अरे आपने अभी तो बोला तुम्हारे बिन हमरा कौनो नहीं. नहीं, इनका भी ख्याल रखिए भगवान. So, do you belong to God or is God someone doing you favors? Big difference. Big difference. Is God someone who is fulfilling your desires? Or do you belong to God? Are you, see, abhi, just a couple of days ago, the Prime Minister released a statement. Of course, he's a politician. He does all of this also with an intention. But the funny thing is, nobody understood it. He said, I feel this incredible energy. I feel like I'm doing God's work. His opponents are criticizing him on it.
Yeah, got
He's
misconstrued. Yeah.
speaking Vedanta. Huh?
It got very badly misconstrued politically.
That doesn't matter. But I'm doing God's work means that's an expression of devotion. It's an expression of devotion. So, do you belong to God, or is God an agent helping you? Who you seek help from? Big difference. So, devotion has nothing to do with asking. Devotion has nothing to do with begging to the Lord. All of that is secondary. all the prayer, all the puja has no meaning if you lack this sense of surrender. All this prayer, all this puja have no meaning if you do not truly recognize the splash of divinity everywhere. What's more important is that sense of surrender. And what are you surrendering to? You're surrendering to an unseen hand that appears to manage everything around you. Life gives unto life. The resilience of the world, the resilience of your own being. Today you get injured, tomorrow thousands of agents, whether it's your bloodstream, whether it's your nervous system, they all work in tandem to make sure that wound is healed. How does it happen? It will heal as long as you don't mess it up. You don't have to do anything. You just have to not mess up. You just have to take care of a few things. The rest nature takes care of. What is that nature? That's what you surrender to. All the problems and issues that seemed unsurmountable 15 years ago, when you were a student, you were worried, oh my God, what will happen to my career? What will happen to my life? What will happen to my wife? What will happen to my... all sorts of worries and all you have. Now you look back and you laugh at them. I hope. I hope you look back and laugh at them. The plan of nature took care of things. What are you worried about? Beautiful song. I think it's by Guns N' Roses. It goes, "Why worry?" Beautiful song. Hear it. Especially if you like English rock music back in the day. Why worry? There should be sunshine after rain. There should be laughter after pain. These things have always been the same. These things have always been the same. That's just the way nature rolls. It has a way of equalizing, it has a way of taking care. It's if you are filled with this feeling of devotion, truly you'll float. You'll float in the lightness of your own being. I'm trying to find words. If you're filled with this feeling of devotion, you'll float in the lightness of your own being. Else you'll feel heavy. Your ego is heavy. It'll weigh you down. And notice how ego and devotion are polar opposites. If you have the feeling of I know, if you have the feeling of I am going to take care of it, if you have the feeling of I am doing it all, I am responsible for it. That I, the higher the I, lower the devotion. Beautiful poem called The Olive Tree. We read it earlier in the text. If some of you recall the olive tree, that was the spirit of the poem. One person said, I need this for the tree, I need that for the tree, I'm going to make sure this is going to happen, this will exactly help the tree. What happened? The tree died. And the other guy just left the tree. Did its small part, of course, a few things it has to take care of. And the tree flourished. I don't have children yet, but I have pets. This is exactly how you have to take care of animals. Little bit you have to take care of, the rest you have to let them figure it out. I'm sure it's the same with children. You have to have that sense of surrender. Nature has created it for it to... There are innumerable unseen forces acting on it. It'll all work out. Don't worry. Sense of surrender. That's bhakti. Now, he continues. He's going to we've overstepped ourselves because we've talked ahead of what we had to. But he'll cover all of this and a little more in the coming sections. So
The Upanishads in the Vedas have given humanity the highest ultimate philosophy, which takes you to the threshold of the supreme reality, Brahman. One of them, entitled Kenopanishad, roars the staggering truth in 5 consecutive verses. That supreme reality, Brahman, is yourself within and not what you worship here in the world. Though the Upanishads are known for their brevity, their terse, cryptic language, it marvels in its profound explanation of God. God is the supreme omnipresence while He resides within as yourself. The self that enlivens your eyes to see, that enlivens your ears to hear, your limbs to function, mind to feel emotions, intellect to conceive thoughts. That is the supreme God, and not what people worship in the external world. Remember that. Realize that.
beautiful section right in the beginning of the Kenopanishad. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. That's what he's referring to. 5 consecutive verses with that line. Rarely do the Upanishads repeat. The Upanishads are meant to be very cryptic, very extremely deliberate in what they say. And here you have an Upanishad with the same line over 5 verses. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Yat pranena na pranitiyena prana praniyate. Tadeva brahmatvam viddhinedam yadidam upasate. Yat shrotrena na shrunotriyena shrotramidagun shrutam. Tadeva brahmatvam viddhinedam yadidam upasate. Goes on. Yan manasana manuseyena hurmano matam. Tadeva brahmatvam viddhinedam yadidam upasate. It's remarkable. Never in an Upanishad you see this. Same line, coming again and again and again. To drive home a point, what is God? God is the ideal behind the ideal. God is the nirguna within the saguna. God is that self within you. We will talk more about it. We have already talked and we'll talk more about it. But how do you get to this God realization? How do you get closer to God? Right now we've talked about developing that spirit of surrender, and that spirit of surrender is the first step, or rather, it's a constant step. Deepening that sense of surrender, that surrender deepens as you grow. But your measure of devotion, the depth of your devotion can be measured by 35 qualities, beautiful qualities enunciated in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, he gives out 35 qualities of a devotee. Incredible. For those of us who have studied, got the chance to study, it's a treat. So how do you measure the depth? And as you grow in stages of devotion, it's like climbing a ladder, the devotion grows deeper. These qualities demonstrate in you. You demonstrate these virtues. And the idea is, don't obsess about all 35. Take 2 or 3 which are inspiring to you and try to emulate them. Try to keep them as yardsticks for you to imbibe. It all levels up. You develop 2 or 3, all of them will level up. They'll all appear in you. That's magic. So from this list of 35, pick any 2 or 3 which speaks to you. We'll talk a little more about this once we cover it. Right?
To attain God realization, a devotee must qualify himself with sterling qualities. The Bhagavad Gita in the 12th chapter, verses 13 to 20, enumerates 35 divine qualities that constitute a true devotee. For a detailed study, you may go through the author's commentary on the Gita. However, a brief statement of those qualities is given below for your ready reference. Hates no being, friendly, compassionate, not possessive, free from egoism, balanced in pleasure or pain, forgiving, ever content, uniting with self, self-controlled, of firm conviction, mind and intellect dedicated to self, who does not agitate the world, who is not agitated by the world, free from joy, envy, fear, anxiety, free from want, pure, dexterous, unconcerned, untroubled, not arrogating any activity as one's own, neither rejoices, hates, grieves, desires, balanced in pleasant or unpleasant happenings, alike to friend, foe, heat, cold, joy, sorrow, honor, dishonor, free from attachment, equal to censure and praise, silent, content with anything, free from possessions, firm-minded, endured with faith, regards self as supreme.
Part of me wants to open the Bhagavad Gita and show you the actual verses. It's spread across 5 or 8 verses. I'm not sure. I think 8 verses. No, 5 verses. Adveshta sarva bhutana maitra karuna evacha. Beautiful. And it begins, it's in order. He gives it in order of how they appear in the Bhagavad Gita, the way he's presented it out here. Not that you have to develop them in order, but there's a reason he begins with hates no being. The first quality of a devotee, hates no being. It's deliberate. That spirit of surrender in you, that acknowledgement of the divinity in you, that recognition of that one unifying agent has to go hand in hand with a sense of empathy, a consciousness of others, kindness. It must. Not only that, that's not the yardstick. No one's asking you to love all beings, but you must hate no being. That's the qualifier. I love everyone but this person. See, that's true for all of us. We love thousands of people. There's always those 2 or 3 people we can't stand. And we entertain negative feelings for. It's those 2 or 3 people for whom those feelings you have to address. Hates no being. Adveshta. You can only not hate any being when you recognize everybody is a helpless expression of their vastness. Everybody is a product of their past. Everybody is a victim of their past. Helplessly expressing their nature. Everybody has a role to play. See, when you see nature function, it helps. In nature, there is a predator, there is a prey. In nature, there's a predator, there's a prey, and nature is ruthless. Nature is ruthless. On the one hand, it expresses extreme compassion for beings. On the other hand, there's no compassion. You'll see a poor, tender animal being annihilated by a stronger animal. But when you watch it function and when you realize that animal is also eaten by a higher animal, that animal is also eaten by, there's a food chain. And there's always checks and balances put in place. And sometimes you also have victories. The same animal that seems to be devouring another has to go days on end without food in search. It's not easy. So you recognize that everything has its place. Everything is part of a process. And every being is helplessly expressing its nature. You have to do your part. You have to be concerned with your part, not so much about how the other person is or what they should be like. When that focus shifts, let me focus on the way I am. You won't hate any being. Especially those who are selfish, especially those who are egoistic, especially those who are mean and nasty. You'll recognize they are victims of their own nature. As they say, hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. The second hurt is a verb. Is it? Yeah. The first hurt is a what part of speech will that be? Would it be an adverb or a adjective? I don't know. I'm lacking in English skills. Hurt people. Those who are hurt actually go on to hurt people. What I'm trying to bring to your attention is devotion is not some relation you have with some unknown entity God. It's directly related to the way you deal with, engage with those around you, the way you relate to the beings around you. Love for fellow beings is perhaps one of the first qualifications of a devotee. Of course, after that, all these other qualities which I have randomly highlighted, there's no such, they just came to me. I was like, okay, let me give an example of what inspires me. So, similarly, I would want you to look at all of these qualities and see what inspires you. What do you think you can try to emulate? What do you think you can try to set up as a goal? I still remember one of the first things, if you ask me the first time I came across these 35 qualities, one of the first things that inspired me was one who does not agitate the world. See, we all know spirituality is all about being equanimous, all about being poised, all about not being agitated by the world. But I was very curious to see, what? One who does not agitate the world, that's also spiritual. A lot of people who are not agitated by the world, but really agitate the world. Apparently are not agitated by the world, they show, but they really agitate the world. So both are important. The way in which you talk, the way in which you relate to others, the way in which you react, the way in which you deal with situations. Are you helping or are you adding to the agitation? Are you adding to the chaos? Are you conscious of your impact on your environment? Still remember, that was one of the first things that really struck me as something we should focus on. what is the effect of you have on your immediate environment? Are you conscious of that? Do you make people around you comfortable? Does the thought of you bring a smile to people's faces? You'll say some people. Some people are smiling when they hear of me, some people are not. So, all these qualities. Sum up, you take any two or three, you emulate them, they all sum up. And they collectively represent a bhakta. A devotee is one who has these qualities. Devotee is one who has these qualities. A devotee of God is one who is endowed with these 35 qualities.
A devotee of God is one who is endowed with the 35 qualities. True devotion means faith in good rather than faith in God. The general concept of devotion, bhakti, does not seem to have any bearing on these qualities. A person with none of these qualities is still reputed to be a great devotee, bhakta. The non-essentials of devotion are blown up at the expense of the essentials. People in ignorance accept fanatic attachment and following of a particular deity or personality, creed or cult as devotion. Devotion is not as simple as that. The devotional path requires a high level of discipline and training to develop the divine traits.
Devotion doesn't come automatically. This is what he's trying to say. Of course, experience is one way in which you can recognize the kaleidoscopic nature of the world. In one way in which you can recognize the when you're young, you feel like you know everything. Yauvana garvam, or you can manage everything. With age, of course, you recognize how big and vast the world is. But that's not a guarantee of devotion. A lot of people, as they grow older, they take to the scriptures and spiritual study. But it won't happen just like that. You have to put in the effort. You have to be sincere. If you take even to scriptural study with the feeling of I know, that's not going to help you develop devotion. And it's all the more difficult when you're older, when you are set in your ways, when you are set in your thoughts. I know how this works. Devotion and ego are completely opposites. And as I said in the beginning, devotion is a deep emotion. It requires a depth. It requires sincerity.
The real and earnest part of devotion is seen in the annihilation of the ego, self-effacement. A true devotee considers himself a spoke in the wheel of life, surrenders his individuality to the totality, to the general plan of nature, recognizes and feels the divinity in and around. Devotion and love are the same emotion, differing in direction, not in nature. When a feeling of affection, fondness is directed to your equals or lower beings or objects, it's called love. The same directed towards the higher is known as devotion. You love your friend, your child, your pet, but you are devoted to your parents, Guru, God. Therefore, one cannot claim to have devotion to God if he has no love for his fellow beings. This idea has been well captured by James Henry Lee Hunt in his poem Abu Ben Adam. The poem narrates Abu Ben Adam's encounter with an angel in his dream. Abu dreamt one night that he saw an angel writing in a book of gold. Abu asked the angel as to what it was writing. The angel replied, it was the names of those who love God. Abu inquired if his name was in that list. The angel replied, it was not so. Then Abu cheerfully implored the angel to put his name down as one who loves his fellow man. The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it returned to show the names of all those whom God really loved. And that list had Abu Ben Adam's name right on top. The poem.
So, the real essence of devotion is in the annihilation of the ego. It's an effacement of the ego. It's letting go of yourself and surrendering to the Lord. When you move from yourself to God, that's devotion. There's no I. I love God. I am a devotee. There's no I. Hanumanji never says, I am a devotee of Lord Ram. He just says Ram. He doesn't say, I love Ram. What does he say? Ram. Big difference. There's no I. It's a self-effacement. It's an annihilation of the ego. And so how does a devotee view this individuality? It views this individuality as a spoke in the wheel, as a part of the whole. It sees that individual journey as simply one of the many trajectories and surrenders to the total plan of nature. So that sense of surrender percolates into every experience in their life. A devotee gains strength from that connection with the divinity. Now, this feeling of devotion and love, he says, are the same emotion. As we said, the first quality of a devotee is Advaishta Sarva Bhutanam, hating no being. When you have compassion, love, affection for your fellow beings, it's the first qualifier of a devotee. So devotion and love are the same emotion. It's just when the direction of that emotion is towards something higher than you, greater than you, you call it devotion. When it's something towards someone, something that is at your level or lower than you, younger than you, less powerful than you, you call it love. That's why you say you're devoted to your guru, you're devoted to your parents, you're dedicated to your organization or your goal. It's a devotion to something bigger than you. Whereas you love your friend, you love your child, you love your pet, you love your this, you love your that. It's the same feeling though. That same commitment, that same love. So devotion and love go hand in hand, and that spirit has been captured in this poem, Abu Ben Adam. Abu Ben Adam, he was a simple fellow. I don't know where he stayed, where he lived. But there's a beautiful encounter he had with an angel. So an angel came in his dream one night. Abu Ben Adam was sleeping, and the angel came in his dream. And the angel was writing some names on a book of gold. God had sent the angel. It was voting season in heaven also, election season. So God was sending his angel to find out who all are going to vote for him. Who all love God? The angel was writing the name of everyone who was, those who love God. So everyone who loved God was supposed to put their name on it. So Abu asked, what are you writing? He said, I am writing the names of all those who love God. So Abu said, "Is my name on the list? Or did my parents put the name on the list or something? Did my wife put my name on the list?" And the angel replied, "No, she didn't do that." So then Abu said, over smart fellow, he said, "Listen, you make another list. Not those who love God. You're writing one list of those who love God. Make another list, please. Make another list of those who love their fellow men." Means those who love those around them. And he said, "Write my name right on top of that. I don't want to be on the list of people who love God. I want to be on the list of people who love their fellow men." So the angel said, "Okay, as you please." He wrote it and then vanished. And next night again, Abu Ben Adam was sleeping. In the dream again, the angel came. And Abu said, "Hello, what have you got?" He said, "I've got a new list." He said, "New list? What is the new list?" He said, "This is a new list of those who God loves." So the first list was those who love God. The second list was those who love their fellow men. Third was those God loves. You can love God, but does God love you? Is the question. It has to be mutual. And no points for guessing. Whose name was right on top of the list of those who God loves? Abu Ben Adam. If you love your fellow men, God loves you. Means there's a proximity, that closeness to that God, that closeness to the unseen hand, that connection with nature, you will only feel when you have a sense of empathy and you have a sense of oneness with all beings around you. It goes hand in hand. You can't be connected to divinity if you're not connected to those around you. Can't happen. So we'll quickly read the poem. It beautifully captures the spirit of devotion and love.
Abu Ben Adam. Abu Ben Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace, and saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold, and to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The vision raised its head.
Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold. It's beautiful how in poetry, if you spend time with poems, you can take out some really deep, you can pick one line and take out some really deep meanings. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold. Who is bold? Who is straightforward? Suppose you see something powerful in front of you. Most of us will sheepishly move around it, be afraid. Suppose you go into your room, imagine yourself back in your school days, and you call into your principal's room. You'll sheepishly move across the room. You feel afraid to talk.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You know, my mom always says, डरता वो है जिसने पाप करे होते हैं. डरता वो है जिसने पाप करे होते हैं. I mean,
अगर
you know,
आपने पाप भरे हैं तो आप
डरते हो.
दूर रहोगे. But if you are clean, if you are unselfish, if you are pure, then you'll be bold, you'll be straightforward. If you have no personal agenda, if you have nothing to gain for yourself, you'll be straightforward, you'll be honest. That's what he's trying to say. Exceeding peace. Ben Adam was someone who lived for others. He was an unselfish person, and therefore he was exceedingly peaceful. It's almost you can't have exceeding peace. At no point will you say, I'm peaceful enough. Don't give me more peace. So exceeding peace means completely fulfilled. And that fulfillment comes from his purity, from his unselfishness. That exceeding peace had made him bold. He saw the angel, he didn't feel afraid. Who is afraid of the unknown? Who is afraid of ghosts? Who is afraid of, who pitches up these visions and fantasies and crazy stories? A mind that is disturbed, a mind that is agitated, a mind that is stressed, worried, entangled. Dare I say, a mind that is selfish. The more selfish you are, the more egoistic you are, the more afraid you are. Afraid of those that exist, even afraid of things that don't exist. When you are close to God, bhoot pisach nikat nahi aaye. See, when you are chanting the Hanuman Chalisa, you're not asking Hanumanji, please help me to protect me from bhoot and pisach. It's simply a statement. When Mahavir is in your heart, bhoot pisach nikat nahi aaye. Exceeding peace had made him bold. And to the presence, to that angel, he said, what are you writing?
And with a look made of all sweet a card, answered, the names of those who love the Lord. And is mine one? Said Abu. Nay, not so, replied the angel. Abu spoke more low, but cheerly still, and said, I pray thee then, write me as one that loves his fellow man. The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it came again with a great awakening light, and showed the names whom love of God had blessed. And lo, Ben Adam's name led all the rest.
This is a beautiful poem. It can be read in multiple ways. God can represent anything higher. God can represent anything bigger. Now, when you don't have to express your love for something, your love has to express itself indirectly through your work on the ground. Your love for your partner has to express the way in which you deal with day-to-day situations. Your love for your family, your love for your near and dear ones is not through the grand gestures that you make or the grand announcements that you make. When you love in and through each small experience, then your love truly demonstrates itself. So God loves those who loves his fellow men. Beautiful poem. And now we shift gears. So from devotion, we spent the last two classes talking about bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. It's not enough. I could keep talking. Keep going on about bhakti. I would highly recommend you go back through the section and you try to capture the essence. See, it's very simple. It's not very complicated language. He's not written anything complicated. But if you ask me, I've read this section at least the 50th time. And I think I've still got one or two points which suddenly have struck me. So I would keep recommending you to read it again. Take your time on a fresh morning over the next couple of days. Go back through the section, try to truly internalize what he's trying to convey. But now we'll shift gears. We're going to conclude class, so we won't really start, but just give a precursor to what lies ahead. Next, he's going to talk about Jnanam, knowledge, the path of knowledge. So he's talked about Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, and now he'll talk about Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. Remember, these are not separate paths, as you've already seen in Bhakti. They're not separate paths. They are beautifully intertwined. And they're the same path they are a multifold path for the same individual. Means each individual needs to follow all these paths. But we've broken it up just for clarity and understanding. We've understood Bhakti independently, now we'll understand Jnanam independently, and that we will do in the next class. So we'll conclude right now. We will meet again on Wednesday, so there's no problem there. But if there are any quick questions, we'll take it up before concluding.
Utsavi, it's not a question. It's only I remember the last thing which you said. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना, खुदा बंदे तेरे से पूछे तेरी रजा क्या है। जो अभी आपने बोला है, जिस उसका यही है कि हम अपने आप को इतना लिफ्ट करें। कितने आपने 35 गुण बताए हैं। मैं एक छोटी सा एक उदाहरण देना चाहता हूँ। बचपन में हम लोग अभी तो कार चलाते हैं, स्कूटर चलाते हैं, क्या क्या है। पहले ज़माने में तो हम ट्रेन का टाइमिंग और बस का टाइमिंग देखते थे, तो एक चार्ट बना के रखते थे सामने कि भाई ये टाइम कितने बजे हमको पहुंचना है, कौन सी ट्रेन में जाना है, टाइम टेबल ऑफ द ट्रेन्स। तो ये जो 35 गुण दिए हुए हैं, अगर हम इसका एक चार्ट बना लें और दीवार पर चिपका के रख लें, तो हम देखें कि रोज भी कितनी चीज़ें हम जो कर रहे हैं, उसको कंपेयर करें कि हम कितने नंबर हम ले रहे हैं, कितने नंबर हम नहीं ले रहे। तो हमारे में वो ज्ञान अपने आप ही आना शुरू हो जाएगा, भक्ति का ज्ञान आना शुरू हो जाएगा। तो वैसे तो जहाँ तक मेरा ख्याल है, भक्ति जो है एक जनरली दिल से होती है भक्ति, और ज्ञान जो है वो हेड से होता है। तो एक फेमिनिन जो है वो ज़्यादा झुकती है भक्ति की तरफ, मेल जो है वो ज्ञान की तरफ ज़्यादा झुकता है। तो खैर वो तो एक लंबी चौड़ी बात है, लेकिन ये जो आपने अभी बोला है बहुत अच्छा है। ये भक्ति की क्लैरिटी बहुत अच्छी मिल गई है। इससे हमको इसको बार बार पढ़ना चाहिए। एक दफ़ा पढ़ने से हमारे को कुछ भी पल्ले नहीं पड़ेगा। अगर जब तक हम इस चैप्टर को बार बार नहीं पढ़ेंगे, तो हम अपने आप में, हमारे में विश्वास नहीं होगा कि भाई हम क्या क्या नहीं कर सकते, क्या क्या कर सकते, क्या नहीं कर सकते। मेरी छोटी सी ये एक वंदना है, मैंने अपना भाव प्रकट किया है। अगर आपको अच्छा लगे तो ठीक है।
Thank you so much, sir. It's very inspiring. Matlab, even at your stage, you're talking about making a chart and doing all these things proactively. It's wonderful. It's something that we all should do. And absolutely, I'm not someone who I don't know. मतलब मैं वो I guess maybe let me take that back. I think you're absolutely right. People should measure themselves. Another thing we talk about elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita also is the personality chart. That's another area where you can actually sort of write down clearly, and sort of create for yourself sort of a matrix of where you stand spiritually on the scope of sattva, rajas, and tamas. But very important, you take 3 or 4 of these qualities, and however you want to measure, however you want to track your progress over a period of 6 months, over a period of 1 year, see how you are growing in these virtues. That's why these qualities are given, for you to have yardsticks to reference your spiritual growth. Otherwise, it's a very random thing. Otherwise, it's a very vague thing. What is spirituality? What is spiritual growth? Great. Thank you for those thoughts. Any questions? Any further questions?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
See you on Wednesday. Hari Om.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.